Let's dive into one of history's most devastating courtroom duels. In April 1895, the famous playwright Oscar Wilde walked into court thinking he was about to secure an easy win. What happened instead was a battle of wits so brutal, it would completely shatter his life.
You have to understand, this was never a fair fight, not even close. It was a perfectly laid trap, a takedown planned with surgical precision. Wilde, a man who lived by his words, was about to watch his greatest gift become the very weapon used against him. So, how did this whole thing even start? Well, funny enough, Oscar Wilde was the one suing. He sued the Marquess of Queensberry for libel, basically for slander, after the Marquess publicly accused him of, quote, posing as a sodomite. Queensberry's defense? He hired a relentless lawyer named Edward Carson to prove that it wasn't slander, because it was true.
So you've got these two titans in the ring. In one corner, there's Oscar Wilde, a celebrity, a genius, armed with this incredible charm and a wit faster than a speeding bullet. And in the other corner, Edward Carson, a sharp, methodical lawyer armed not with charm, but with cold, hard facts and a killer strategy. It was the artist versus the assassin. Now, here's what's so brilliant about Carson's approach. He doesn't come out swinging. No, he's way too smart for that. Instead, he starts slow, patient. He begins laying bricks, one by one, building his case not with loud accusations, but with these seemingly harmless little questions. He starts off by asking about Wilde's friendship with a young man, Lord Alfred Bosie Douglas. The question sounds innocent, right? You have stayed with him at many places. But what Carson is really doing is painting a picture for the jury, establishing a pattern of close, constant intimacy. And Wilde answers directly, not seeing the danger. But with that simple admission, the noose tightens just a little bit. See, Carson establishes not just intimacy, but secrecy. These weren't public hotels. They were private rooms. And just like that, Wilde's own words became the first bricks in the wall Carson was building around him. Okay, so once he's established a pattern in Wilde's life, Carson pivots. He goes after his philosophy, his art. He brings up Wilde's whole art for art's sake idea and asks this loaded question, trying to show the jury that Wilde plays by a different set of moral rules than they do. And Wilde's response is pure Wilde. It's a witty, dismissive comeback that gets a huge laugh from everyone in the courtroom. But here's the thing. While they were all laughing, Carson had scored a major point. He'd shown the jury a man who judges the world on aesthetics, not morality. And he did it by letting Wilde's own wit hang him out to dry. The courtroom was on Wilde's side. They were entertained. But Carson had been patiently waiting, setting the stage. He was about to ask a question that would turn Wilde's greatest strength, that lightning-fast wit, into his absolute fatal flaw. Carson changes the subject. He starts asking about another one of Wilde's acquaintances, a young servant boy. He asks a few setup questions, and then, with the whole courtroom hanging on his every word, he springs the trap. The question is just brutal in its simplicity. Did you ever kiss him? A yes is a confession. A no might be a lie he can't back up. The entire room just holds its breath. How is the great Oscar Wilde going to talk his way out of this one? And there it is. The answer that sealed his fate. In trying to be clever and dismissive, Wilde says something absolutely catastrophic. Because what the jury heard wasn't a denial. What they heard was, the only reason I didn't kiss him is because he wasn't good-looking enough. You could have heard a pin drop. That one arrogant joke sucked all the air out of the room. The laughter died. All that was left was this shocked silence. With a single sentence, Wilde had lost the jury completely. And Carson knew he'd struck gold. But Carson wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. He saw the crack in Wilde's composure, and he just hammered it. He bombarded him with questions about money, about gifts, about passionate letters written to young men. He wasn't building anymore, you see. He was demolishing. And finally, under all that pressure, the genius broke. I mean, this is just a stunning admission. Right there, in open court, Wilde confesses that Carson's strategy worked. He basically says, you got me. You pushed my buttons, and I gave frivolous answers when I shouldn't have. He completely validated everything Carson had been trying to prove. After that confession, it was over.
The trial was done. The incredibly intricate trap that Carson had been building for days finally snapped shut. And for Oscar Wilde, the fallout was immediate, and it was devastating. So let's just look at how Carson built his victory. Every single brick was one of Wilde's own statements. His admissions of close friendships, his evasive answers, his arrogant tone, and of course, that disastrous line about the boy being too plain. And the final piece? Wilde himself admitting he'd been fluent. The case against Wilde, built by Wilde himself, was now complete. And the speed of his fall from grace is just staggering. Wilde's libel case collapses, and just hours later, he's the one under arrest. All the evidence Carson dug up was turned over to the state. Within weeks, he went from being the most celebrated writer in London to a convicted criminal, sentenced to 2 years of hard labor, a sentence that would completely break him. The showdown between Carson and Wilde is a masterclass in legal strategy for sure, but it also leaves us with this much bigger, kind of timeless question. For Oscar Wilde, his wit was everything. It was his sword and his shield. But in that courtroom, it became the very thing that led to his own destruction. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?